We're at IP Possibilities. We're with Richard Shockey of the SIP Forum. Richard, you made very important points, one of them being that we're at a tipping point where IP is going to be the way voice is transmitted.
Well, it's not even a tipping point. I mean, we're already there. So the issue is, how do we actually go through the full transition, and how do we go to an end game to a certain extent, which is, if we see the development of voice over LTE increase to where 75% of all voice is now IP originated or terminated in some way or other, there are those legacy systems that are out there that are going to have to be transitioned, and that is actually a fairly substantial public policy issue. But we now have at least 5 to 6 years of fairly substantial work with the major urban phone companies, AT&T and Verizon, the cable operators. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. It works. It's now transitioning to all the access platforms as well. And I didn't even mention enterprise. Enterprise has been using SIP and voice over IP now for 15 years. You cannot buy a PBX system that is not SIP. And that is obviously going to be a challenge for rural carriers in smaller areas, where you've got factories and other facilities and stuff like that want to transition their enterprise call platforms either to a cloud-based IP solution in some way, shape, or form, or put in their own PBX systems, rural hospitals, for instance, et cetera, et cetera. So this is no longer a debatable subject. It's a question of timing.
Yeah, and you'd said that 75% could be here within 3 years. Interconnect seems to be a problem with the tandem switch going away, and I think I heard one of the larger carriers only has 4 interconnect points across the country. What about that?
Well, I mean, that's the consolidation. Rate centers are going away. We're going to a bill and keep model. IP is more efficient than TDM, but the downside to this is we're going to see interconnection consolidation, middle mile issues, how special access circuits are going to be used to interconnect with those rate centers, how other companies within the ecosystem step up to the plate and provide middle mile like services. I think certainly some of the CLEX, Level 3, EXO, and other companies are going to be working with rural carriers on that, but there are substantial policy issues that are associated with that, and those have to be resolved, and they're going to have to be resolved in about 3 years.
Yeah, it sounds like a fast time frame, but there's some other, it seems like innovative ideas that are out there. One of them you talked about was this whole idea of personal numbers, right? Why have it to an geographic area?
Yeah, I've filed with the FCC on the future of numbering quite some time. Given the fact that we have an all IP infrastructure, is the phone number really something like a domain name? If you can issue it, if the FCC can issue it or authorize its issuance, and you move from Northern Virginia to Mobile, Alabama, or wherever, why can't you just keep your phone number? One of the most important competitive developments we had in the U.S. was local number portability, and that worked. It worked spectacularly well. So we see taking number portability to the next logical step, which would be keep your number for life. Why not?
Well, and also you mentioned the levels of security, but also just one of the obvious things of security is, the person's picture comes up with it, right? So you know who it is.
Sure, absolutely. This whole idea of identity, the politicians in Washington, I get calls, everybody has, about the fact that caller ID spoofing and violations of the do not call list. They're asking the tactical community, how can we fix it? It's like, fix it or we'll fix you. And the idea that the picture would come up, we can in fact rethink the whole CNAM issue with something I call CNAM Plus. It could be a business card like thing. If in fact it is your doctor calling you to tell you your test results in some way, shape, or form, wouldn't you like to know it is really him instead of shuffling him to voicemail? I mean, that's what we're trying to solve here. If it is in fact your bank for some reason, one way or the other, or it is in fact your mother-in-law or something like that. That's the kind of thing that we need to build into the network that we cannot do with the existing TDM system. There are possibilities and opportunities here that we cannot discount through this transitional phase.
Well, and we're seeing some of this stuff on kind of the proprietary networks, and a lot of times people associate those proprietary networks with open, but in a way they're really not. And what you're talking about is truly an open approach, right?
Well, the PSTN is an open network. I mean, it is the any-to-any model of anybody who has a phone number I can call anywhere on the planet, and that works, and that is a value. I mean, there's a lot of things involving the phone system that we gladly pay for. Emergency services is one of them, the 911 system. However, the any-to-any model clearly, demonstrably is a value to consumers versus other kinds of technologies, such as the old instant messaging systems that were proprietary. AOL, Yahoo, Microsoft had them one way or the other, but they all fell by the wayside. And they fell by the wayside because they were essentially closed systems. They did not interoperate. And I basically look at Facebook and LinkedIn as closed networks. They say, oh, Facebook is going to be the new phone company. Well, that's just, that's just horse pucky. That's just the silliest idea I've ever heard of. I just want to roll around on the floor and laugh. It's just never going to happen. All the evidence we have historically indicates that open, interconnected, any-to-any networks through cooperative service providers in an open, standards-based model works. Not only that, it makes money. Again, voice in the United States is still a very profitable business. Whether it's $14.95 or $19.95 per consumer or on the mobile networks, this is a $140 billion a year revenue stream for our nation's carriers, and I think that's worth $140 billion of revenue is worth preserving.
Well, there's definitely a lot of possibilities there. Richard, I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.